Welcome, traveler. Tonight we journey back to the world where heating didn't exist. Your bed was out of straws, hygiene was non-existent, and the only thing to keep you warm was fire and your dirty goat that snores all night. And the reality is that here, you wouldn't even last 24 hours. Because let me tell you, if fire doesn't kill you, the cold will. So before we begin, please consider subscribing to the channel, but only if you love the video. And in the comments, let me know where you are listening from and what time it is for you right now. Whether you're relaxing at home in Belgium, preparing for sleep in Arizona, or just driving somewhere in Seattle, I'm grateful that you're here. Get comfortable and let's begin. The good thing, you wake up alive. The bad thing, you wish you didn't. Your face half frozen to your own shoulder. You're sleeping in all your clothes because there's no such thing as sleepwear. And also no such thing as heating, unless you count a smoky fire that's long gone out, which you don't. It went out hours ago, sometime before your blanket. A stiff rectangle of matted wool gave up pretending to be warm and started absorbing frost instead. You're not under it, you're inside it, curled up like a terrified hedgehog, nose buried in your knees, trying to trap some body heat before your toes give up completely. It's pitch black, except for the tiniest crack of pre-dawn light creeping through a gap in the thatch above. No candles, no lantern. You're not made of tallow, and you're not rich. If you want light, you'll have to burn something. If you want warmth, same problem. The fire pit at the center of the room is cold and full of ash. You're lying on dirt, and beside you, your entire family, parents, siblings, maybe an aunt or cousin, possibly a goat, all packed in together like reluctant sardines, exhaling steam into the freezing air. You all smell. No one says anything. The snoring is loud enough to count as weather. You try to get up. Mistake. The pain in your knees hits first. They're stiff from sleeping curled too tight. Then your spine makes a sound you didn't think bones could make. You stand anyway, slowly, barefoot, because medieval shoes are expensive and you're not wasting them indoors. Your feet touch the floor, which is just packed mud, remember. And it is, scientifically speaking, a betrayal. Cold, wet, possibly chicken-contaminated betrayal. Your toes curl involuntarily. The urge to scream is powerful. You hold it in. Outside, it's even worse. You push open the crooked wooden door and get a face full of wind, so cold it feels personal. It cuts through every thread of your clothing, which is, by the way, a single wool tunic and a threadbare cloak that smells like it lost a bet with a damp cellar. No gloves, no scarf, no hat, just misery. You squint into the white-gray morning, snow on the ground, frozen mud beneath it. Everything is silent except the wind and your own regrets. Now, you need water. For anything. To drink, to heat, to pour into the pot for whatever you're pretending counts as breakfast. So you grab a pail and walk barefoot or in clogs, if you're lucky, to the nearest stream or well. The walk is half a mile, uphill, against the wind. The water is freezing. The bucket is wood. The rope burns your hands because it's coated in ice. You draw up the bucket and spill half of it. Great. Now your sleeve is soaked and it's 28 degrees Fahrenheit. It won't dry, it'll just freeze. On your arm. Back home, the water goes in a pot over a fresh fire, assuming you can even get one going. The wood is damp. The flint is stubborn. You burn your thumb. You curse. Your breath fogs the air like a chimney. Finally, a little fire. You huddle over it like it owes you money. Breakfast is pottage again, reheated from yesterday's scraps. Barley, onions, some dried cabbage. It's gray, it's sad, but it's warm. You slurp it in silence, surrounded by steaming, sniffling family members in identical layers of damp, scratchy wool. And it's still only 6:45 a.m. You haven't even gone to work yet, and you're already halfway to frostbite, starvation, and existential despair. Welcome to medieval winter. You've survived 1 hour. Maybe. Congratulations, You've finished your medieval breakfast sludge, and your fingers still technically function. That means it's time to go to work. Because guess what? Even in a frozen hellscape, where your breath turns to ice in midair, and your shoes are barely more than leather socks, you don't get a snow day. You're a peasant, not a child. Crops may sleep through winter, but humans don't, especially poor ones. Your job depends on who you are, or more accurately, who owns you. If you're bonded to a manor, you probably have winter tasks: collecting firewood, repairing tools, clearing paths, slaughtering animals. If you're a tradesman's apprentice, it's time to haul goods to market or help your master freeze his fingers off while repairing something he swears is urgent. If you're a woman, surprise, you have a full day of labor lined up too: tending the hearth, spinning wool, making bread, feeding animals, scraping crust from the chamber pot. Gender equality is about 800 years away, and even then, don't hold your breath. You wrap yourself in the same cloak you slept in and step into the road, which is not really a road. It's frozen mud with the occasional embedded horse dropping. It's uneven, rutted, and just slippery enough to guarantee you'll fall at least once today. Your shoes don't have tread. There's no salt, no gravel, just ice, dirt, and a vague hope that gravity gives you a break. It does not. You fall on your side 5 steps from the house. Your hip hurts. It will keep hurting until spring. But you keep walking, because that's what you do. You pass other people on the road, wrapped in identical woolen layers, faces pink with windburn. No one talks. It's too cold to talk. If your spit freezes mid-sentence, it's not worth starting. The only sound is the crunch of ice underfoot, the occasional hacking cough, and the creak of overloaded carts being pulled by miserable donkeys who, let's be honest, would also rather be dead right now. At work, whatever it is, there's no relief. If you're outside, you stay outside. Tools are cold, materials are cold. Your hands go numb fast, which is dangerous when you're handling sharp objects or lifting anything heavy. You try to breathe through your nose so your teeth don't ache from the wind. Doesn't help. Your nostrils freeze, your lips crack, your thumb splits open because your skin is dry, and there's no balm, no ointment, no moisturizer in medieval peasant life. Just cracked hands and shame. If you're lucky enough to work indoors, don't get excited. Indoors just means less windy, not warm. Most workshops have no insulation, and if there is a fire, it's small and reserved for whoever outranks you. You warm your hands when they aren't looking. Then you get back to work before they decide you're slacking. And heaven help you if your job involves water, like dyeing, tanning, brewing, or cleaning, because that water is near freezing, and so are your fingers. You get wet once, and you'll be shivering for the rest of the day, praying for sun or just a brief visit from death. There's no lunch break. Maybe a chunk of bread in your pocket, if it didn't freeze solid. No tea, no soup stand, no sympathetic coworker with a thermos, just cold air and hard work and the slow creeping dread of knowing the sun is already halfway down the sky and you still haven't finished your quota. You keep going. You always keep going. Because if you don't, you'll lose your job, or worse, get replaced. There's always someone just desperate enough to haul firewood with frostbitten fingers for a half loaf of rye and the privilege of not starving. When the bell tolls or the sky finally starts to dim, you go home, slowly, carefully. One wrong step on the ice and your leg breaks, and now you're a burden. And burdens don't last long in medieval winter. You're too tired to feel your hands. Your nose is raw. Your breath smells like boiled turnip and hopelessness. But hey, you did your job. You didn't die. And that's the bar, the extremely low, frozen solid bar of winter in the Middle Ages. You made it back home. Barely. Your knees hurt. Your fingers don't work right. And your cloak smells like something that used to be alive and gave up. The sun's gone. Not going down, gone. One moment the sky is pale and smudged, and the next it's ink. Medieval nights don't ease in. They just swallow you. And the cold? It gets meaner, more personal, like it knows you made it through the day, and it wants to punish you for it. There's no streetlight to guide you, no lanterns lining the road, just darkness. A darkness that's not poetic or peaceful. It's pitch black, ankle-breaking, toe-stubbing, possibly walk into a cow kind of darkness. You stumble back to your hut by feel, dragging your feet so you don't trip on anything frozen solid. By the time you get inside, your toes are numb, your cheeks sting, and your breath is coming out in painful little clouds. Inside is barely warmer than outside. The fire's almost out. Again. Now, let's talk about fuel. You'd like to start a big warm fire? You'd like that very much. But firewood costs money, and gathering it takes hours. Plus, the local lord might just decide that all the good wood is his. You've already been fined once for unauthorized stick collection, so you use what you've got. Damp branches, maybe some dried dung, a bit of straw. It smokes more than it burns, but it's heat. Sort of, everyone crowds around it like moths with poor circulation. Your eyes burn, your nose runs, and now guess what? You're getting sick. Because of course you are. You've been cold, wet, underfed, and overworked for weeks. That tickle in your throat isn't a fluke. It's the beginning of something. A cough, a shiver, a tightness in the chest. There's no doctor coming. You don't have access to medicine, and even if you did, it would probably involve drinking boiled moss while a priest mutters over your armpit. You have no immunity, no antibiotics, and no backup plan. So you do what everyone does, pretend it's nothing, and hope you don't die. You try to sleep, but sleep is a hostile negotiation. You're shivering under a scratchy blanket that smells like 5 people and 1 wet goat. Your feet haven't thawed. Your back aches from the hard floor. You can't stretch out because there's no room. Your brother keeps snoring like he swallowed a drum. The fire sputters. The wind howls through the thatch. You cough once, then again, and everyone pretends not to hear it because they know what it means. You curl tighter. You dream of warmth, of food, of silence, all things that do not exist in a medieval winter. And that's when the real threat shows up. Not wolves or raiders or tax collectors, though. Honestly, they're always a possibility. No, tonight's threat is sickness. It creeps in with your breath, settles in your lungs, and makes itself at home. It's just a cold, maybe? Or maybe it's the start of something worse. The kind of sickness that spreads, that takes your neighbor, then your cousin, then half the village. And there's nothing to stop it. No quarantine, no treatment. Just cold nights and shallow breathing. Morning can't come fast enough, but when it does, you're not grateful. You're exhausted, sore, and still sick. Your joints ache, your throat burns, and the worst part, you still have to go to work. There are no sick days in medieval England. If you don't show up, someone else will. And if no one else does, your family doesn't eat, so you drag yourself up, wrap your cloak around your shoulders, and step back out into the cold, hoping today doesn't make it worse. Because in medieval winter, worse is always an option. Let's talk about hygiene, or more accurately, the total lack of it. Because in medieval winter, the idea of getting clean comes with one major catch. You might die, literally, from bathing. You want to be fresh and presentable. That's adorable. But the moment you strip down and splash cold water on your medieval skin, the Grim Reaper starts warming up. To begin with, there's no bathroom, not even close. No indoor plumbing, no hot water. Not even a tub, unless you're rich, and you're not. Your options are, 1. Stand near a freezing stream and rub yourself with wet cloth until your skin begs for mercy. Or 2. Stay dirty and pretend it builds character. Most people go with option 2, because cleaning yourself in winter isn't just unpleasant. It's an act of bravery with a high chance of pneumonia. Now, if you really insist on washing, let's walk through it. First, you fetch the water. That means half a mile to the nearest well or stream with a bucket that leaks just enough to make your legs wet by the time you get back. Good start. You set it near the fire, assuming you even have one, and wait an hour for it to go from freezing to slightly less freezing. Then you splash it over your body and start scrubbing with what? Exactly. Soap is rare, maybe a little lye or leftover animal fat mixed with ash. You rub that into your skin and call it a scrub. Smells awful. Feels worse. And here's the fun part. Once you're wet, you're on the clock. The air inside your house? Cold. The air outside your house? Murder. If you don't dry off quickly and thoroughly, you're basically gift wrapping yourself for hypothermia. Towels? No such thing. You've got a rag maybe? Or your cloak? The same one you wear outside, to sleep and to cover yourself while relieving your medieval bowels behind a shrub. That's your towel. Try not to think about it too hard. What about communal baths, you ask? Yes, some towns had them. Wooden tubs, warmed water, even attendants if you were lucky. But they're expensive, crowded, risky. The water isn't changed between bathers, and the last person in might have been coughing up something medieval science doesn't have a name for. You go in with grime and come out with smallpox, if you're lucky. So unless you're nobility, and you're not, you skip the bathhouse and keep your dirt where it belongs, on your skin. And before you start romanticizing the natural oils approach, remember this: you're not using deodorant. You're not trimming anything. You've been sweating in wool for weeks. You sleep beside other unwashed humans. You work with animals. The smell isn't just bad, it's sentient. It could probably vote if it had a name. And yet no one complains, because you all stink, equally, together. It's a social contract built on mutual olfactory trauma. So no, you don't bathe, not in winter. You rinse your hands when you have to. You wipe your face with a damp rag and call it good. If you're feeling luxurious, maybe you scrape your scalp with a wooden comb and dig out the lice that have been paying rent. That's it. And somehow you keep going. Because winter doesn't care about your hygiene, and neither does anyone else. Modern toilets are miracles you don't think about until you're stuck without one. Buttons, water pressure, walls, privacy. In medieval winter, you get none of that. You don't get a room. You don't even get a seat. What you get is a brutal decision every morning: freeze your rear off outside, or hold it until your internal organs file a formal complaint. Let's start with the basics. There is no bathroom in your home, not even a bucket tucked behind a curtain. Why? Because the air inside is already disgusting enough without adding fresh human waste to it. So the default option is to do your business outside. Behind the house, maybe near the livestock shed. It's not glamorous, but it's got space, ventilation, and nothing judging you except your neighbor's goat. Of course, it's the middle of winter. The ground is frozen, the wind is vicious, and nothing, absolutely nothing, prepares you for dropping your pants in sub-zero temperatures. Every gust of wind is a punishment. Your thighs seize up, your eyes water. You try to hurry, but your body's just not built to perform under those conditions. You crouch. You regret every decision that led to this. And just when you think it's over, you realize there's no toilet paper. Medieval people didn't have charmin. They had moss, leaves, straw, scraps of linen if they were lucky, and absolutely zero shame. In winter, moss is frozen, leaves are buried, linen is too valuable to waste. That leaves straw, stiff, dry, and completely unqualified for the job. You grab a handful and do what needs doing. It's not clean, it's not comfortable, and it's definitely not sanitary. But it's all you've got. Public options? Let's talk about those. If you live in a town, there might be a communal latrine, a hole in the ground with a few planks over it, sometimes shared by an entire street. It's exactly as pleasant as it sounds. Cold wood, no walls, and a line of people pretending they don't notice each other's noises. In bigger towns, you might find a garderobe built into the side of a building, basically a stone seat over a chute that dumps waste into the street or moat below. Great for ventilation, horrible for dignity. Also, attackers sometimes climbed in through those chutes during sieges. That's right, a medieval assassin could literally sneak into your castle through the toilet. And if you think rich people had it better, think again. Castles had privies. Little stone closets with a hole and a bench. Sounds fine, right? Except they were freezing cold, rarely cleaned, and often located at the edge of the castle wall, so you got an excellent view of your own waste falling into the moat. Also, no insulation. So while you sat there, your backside was practically exposed to the sky. Luxurious. So yes, the toilet situation will break you. Not because it's gross, though it absolutely is, but because it's relentless. There's no relief, no privacy, no warm bathroom tile underfoot. Just you, the cold, and a handful of straw. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again. Because even in a medieval winter, biology doesn't care how miserable you are. You'd think sleep would be the easy part. A chance to escape the misery. Let your body recover, drift off, and dream about fire and stew, and not living like a wool-wrapped icicle. But in medieval winter, sleep isn't comfort. It's endurance. And you're not resting, you're just surviving horizontally. The first problem is the bed, or whatever passes for one. If you're poor, and yes you are, your mattress is a sack filled with straw that's seen better centuries. It smells like mildew and livestock. There's no sheet, no mattress cover. Just the rough weave of the sack itself, against your skin. Unless you slept in your clothes, which you did, because taking them off would be suicide. The straw pokes you all night. It shifts under your weight. It crunches when you roll over. And you share it with more than just your siblings. There are fleas, possibly lice, definitely bed bugs. Your blanket? One woolen layer, heavy from moisture, stiff from dirt, and about as warm as a passive-aggressive shrug. You might have two if you're lucky, but that just means twice the weight and twice the smell. If the fire's out, which it always is, the temperature drops below freezing. You tuck your feet up into your chest. You lie still. You breathe slow, because moving makes it worse. Every exposed patch of skin is a liability. You don't sleep alone either. The medieval concept of privacy was non-existent. Your family's in the same room, all of them. Parents, grandparents, kids, maybe an uncle who overstayed his welcome during the last harvest. Some of them snore, some of them mutter. Someone always coughs, someone always farts. The baby cries, the dog fidgets, and someone inevitably tries to steal more blanket. You don't complain, you just pretend to be asleep, like everyone else. The cold gets into your bones. You feel it in your joints, in your teeth, in the back of your throat. You curl tighter. Your nose runs, but there's no handkerchief. You sniffle, wipe it on your sleeve. Someone mumbles. You try not to shiver too loudly. The fire in the center of the room flickers low. Just a few embers now, barely enough to throw light, let alone heat. You think about getting up to add fuel, but that would mean standing, exposing skin, moving, so you don't. You stay still and hope you don't die in your sleep. Sometimes you don't sleep through the night. Not just because of the discomfort, but because of something called first sleep and second sleep. Medieval people often woke up in the middle of the night, not because they wanted to, but because their bodies just did. A few hours after sundown, your body gives up. You lie awake in the dark for an hour or two. No screens, no lights, just the sound of your heart, your breath, and the guy next to you muttering about demons in his sleep. Then, eventually, you drift off again. And when you finally do fall asleep, it's not restful. You wake up stiff, sore, and still cold. Your breath fogs the air. Your fingers are numb. Your back hurts from the uneven ground. Your eyes sting from the smoke. And somehow, your blanket has slipped halfway across the room, where someone else has claimed it. You sit up. Your joints pop. The day hasn't started, but your misery already has. Sleep didn't help. It never does. You don't feel rested. You feel like a bag of wet firewood someone kicked. So no, sleeping in medieval winter isn't rest. It's another test, another nightly gamble with the cold. And just like everything else in this century, it's unpleasant, unsanitary, and wildly overrated. By now, you're wondering why no one's doing anything about all this. The cold, the hunger, the sickness, the toilets that double as death traps. Surely someone, a leader, a scholar, a man of God, has a plan. Good news, the church has indeed weighed in on the situation. Bad news, they think your suffering is great, holy even, character building, soul purifying. You're not miserable, you're spiritually thriving. Medieval Christianity leaned hard into the idea that pain on earth led to reward in heaven. So the more you suffered now, the better off your soul would be later. Freezing to death in a damp hovel, that's not a failure of infrastructure. That's a fast track to sainthood. Couldn't afford food? Great. Fasting was holy. Got sick and couldn't bathe? Perfect. Humility? Cold, dirty, and starving? That's basically a pilgrimage without the walking. You think you need medicine? The village priest thinks you need prayer. You think you need food? Try repentance. Feeling hopeless? That's good. It keeps pride in check. And you better not complain too much, or it might count as vanity. Life was supposed to be hard. If it wasn't hard, you might get ideas. And ideas, especially ones about improving your conditions, were dangerous. What you needed was obedience, and layers of wool, but mostly obedience. So when you get sick this winter, and you will, the first advice you hear won't be rest and hydrate. It'll be confess your sins. Your cough is either a test from God, a punishment from God, or just a reminder that the flesh is weak. In any case, the solution is spiritual. There's no hospital, and even if there were, it's full of monks handing out garlic and holy water. You might get bled, you might get blessed, you will not get better. And let's say you die peacefully, painfully, frostbitten, it doesn't matter. That's not a tragedy, that's a transition from suffering to reward. As long as you confessed and took communion and didn't die with unrepented sin on your soul. Because then it's not heaven you're heading to, it's purgatory, or worse. So yes, the church cares, but not about your comfort. They're focused on your eternal situation. Your short-term suffering is just part of the program. Of course, not everyone believed this made sense. People had doubts. People complained, quietly. Sometimes heresies popped up. Folks saying maybe we should focus more on earthly kindness, or maybe the priest should stop eating roast goose while preaching self-denial. Those people usually ended up excommunicated or dead. So mostly, everyone just nodded along. Yes, Father. Thank you, Father. I'll go back to freezing in my sackcloth tunic and thanking the Lord for my chilblains. So to recap, you're cold, hungry, sick, sleep-deprived, and now you've been spiritually guilt-tripped into accepting all of it as your fault. It's not the system. It's not the weather. It's not centuries of structural poverty. It's you, your sins, your pride, your refusal to suffer with grace. Welcome to medieval theology. It won't warm your feet, but it will make you feel bad about wishing they weren't purple. Let's talk about your medieval winter wardrobe. And we use wardrobe very loosely. There's no closet, no dresser, no cute rotation of coats. You have one outfit. That's it. One. If you're lucky, it's made of wool. If you're not lucky, it's also made of wool, but poorly, scratchy, lumpy, possibly home-dyed with onion skins and sadness. Welcome to fashion, when clothing is hand-sewn, brutally expensive, and worn until it disintegrates or gets buried with you. Start with the underlayer, a rough linen shirt that functions more like skin you can't remove. It's itchy, it's stained. It's never really clean because soap is rare and laundry is a public humiliation that involves boiling water, ash, and beating fabric with a stick. On top of that, a tunic, another layer of wool, stiff from the cold, maybe greasy from the tallow you smeared on it during last week's snowfall. If you're male, it falls to your knees. If you're female, to your ankles. If you're a child, you're probably wearing your cousin's hand-me-down that doesn't quite fit either way. Now the outer layer, your cloak. It's not a dramatic, wind-blown cape. It's a blanket with a hole in it. Maybe it has a hood, maybe not. Either way, it's heavy. It absorbs moisture like a sponge. Once it's wet, it stays wet. Once it freezes, it becomes armor, but the kind that makes it impossible to move your shoulders. It smells like sheep, not a wool sweater, an actual sheep that's been sweating and sleeping in a pile of other sheep since August. Footwear. Hope you didn't expect much. Most peasants wore basic leather turn shoes, stitched together with just enough sole to prevent your feet from fusing with the dirt. In winter, you might shove straw inside for warmth. It doesn't work. Socks? Optional. Rare. Usually made of more wool, more straw, or strips of cloth. You tie them on with leather cords and pretend it's fine while frost creeps up your ankles like a jealous ghost. Accessories? You're hilarious. Gloves? Maybe, if someone in your family could knit, but they're fingerless and full of holes. Scarves? More like a scrap of fabric tied over your mouth, so you don't inhale snow directly. Layers are great in theory, but every layer is heavy, itchy, and already soaking up every drop of sweat, smoke, and soup you've encountered this week. You don't take your clothes off to relax. You take them off to beat out the lice and maybe hang them near the fire for 5 minutes if no one else gets there first. And let's be clear, you don't change your outfit daily or weekly. You wear it until it wears you. Laundry is an ordeal, and drying clothes in winter is nearly impossible. You wash your shirt maybe once every few weeks, maybe less. It freezes stiff before it dries, and you might have to put it on half damp because it's your only shirt. Your cloak never gets washed. Your shoes never come off indoors. Every layer is functional, filthy, and entirely necessary. So no, your clothes aren't cozy. They don't make you feel protected. They make you feel like a sack of kindling, waiting to catch on fire. And yet they're your best defense against winter. You hate them, you're grateful for them, and you'll cry if you ever lose your only tunic to a wandering pig, which, by the way, is not that rare. Medieval winters didn't come with a pause button. The cold might slow your blood, freeze your water jugs, and turn your joints into brittle wooden hinges. But guess what? The animals still need feeding. They still poop. They still scream at you at 5 a.m. because a snowdrift covered their trough, and their one brain cell is screaming starvation. So while you're battling your own creeping frostbite, your top priority is making sure a goat doesn't die of hangry rage. First, you have to get outside, again. Your boots are still damp from yesterday. Your fingers haven't fully recovered from tying frozen twine with numb hands. But there's no such thing as calling it off. The animals don't understand. I need 5 more minutes. So you shove your stiff limbs into stiff clothes and push open the door into the same world of ice, wind, and regret you left the night before. The animal shelter isn't a nice red barn. It's a lean-to, a slanted roof made of thatch and warped wood, maybe with a mud brick wall if you're fancy. The animals huddle together in a kind of livestock survival huddle. Goats, pigs, maybe a cow if your family's doing well. They stink, they're loud, and the moment you show up without food, they make that known in no uncertain terms. Pigs scream, cows moan, chickens launch a targeted psychological operation involving pecking and betrayal. Their feed, that's on you. You haul it from wherever it's stored, the loft, the shed, or the inside of your house, because sometimes there's nowhere else. Frozen hay bales don't cooperate. You have to pry them apart with a pitchfork that's rusted and weighs more than your arms can handle. And hay in winter? Scarce, expensive, possibly moldy. You feed what you can. They eat it anyway, mold and all, because they're also miserable and have no standards. Then comes water. Because yes, animals need it too. And yes, theirs is also frozen. If you're lucky, the trough just has a thin crust of ice you can crack. If not, you're hauling buckets again, back to the stream or the well, trying to break through the ice without dumping water down your own leg, or theirs. You haven't lived until you've had a cow sneeze directly into your eye, while you're trying to stop her from knocking over a freezing bucket with her hoof. And the worst part? This isn't a one-time task. You do this morning and night, every day, without fail. If you skip one, something dies. A goat starves. A pig eats something it shouldn't. A chicken tries to roost on your bed out of spite. You're not just cold and tired. You're responsible for animals that are somehow just as angry about winter as you are. It's like a barnyard therapy group where everyone's mad and no one's allowed to leave. So you keep feeding them. You rub your frozen hands together and whisper threats to a sheep who just kicked you. You pour water and hay and hope no one drops dead on your watch. You slip on something you hope is just frozen mud, and when it's finally done, you go back inside, colder, dirtier, and knowing you'll have to do it again before the sun's down. You're hungry. Again. Still, perpetually. Welcome to mealtime in medieval winter, a heartwarming experience where everything is either frozen, stale, or one wrong sniff away from being fatal. Your body is burning calories, just trying to stay alive, but the food you're relying on was grown in a different season, stored poorly, and lovingly seasoned with mold and desperation. You don't have a pantry. You have a small pile of root vegetables slowly softening in a corner. Maybe a bag of dried peas, a loaf of bread that could qualify as a medieval self-defense weapon. The bread's mostly rye or barley, since wheat is expensive and reserved for people who have more than one room in their house. It's hard, coarse, and sometimes mixed with filler. Ground up tree bark, old oats, maybe some mashed acorns if the harvest was bad. Spoiler, the harvest was bad. Fresh meat? That's a fantasy. Any meat you had was probably salted or smoked months ago. It tastes like wood and salt and regret. You gnaw on a chunk of it, while trying not to think about whether it's from a pig, a cow, or the goat that went missing last November. There's no spice, no heat, just preserved animal and your own stubborn will to not pass out. Soup is the main event, if you can call it that. Technically, it's pottage, a stew made from whatever you could find, stretched with water, thickened with grain, and ladled from a pot that's been sitting over the hearth for days, maybe weeks. You just keep adding new stuff on top of the old stuff. If it starts to taste weird, you add more water and pretend it's tradition. What's that floating in it? You don't ask. That's how people stay alive. And now let's talk about the vegetables. You've got onions, if they haven't rotted. Turnips, cabbage, possibly a carrot, maybe. Nothing fresh, nothing green. Everything boiled until it gives up. Fiber? Sure. Flavor? Absolutely not. The cabbage smells like wet fabric. The turnip tastes like dirt wearing a sweater. But you eat it because your stomach stopped being picky around the third week of cold wind and regret. Drinks? Water, if you're brave. It's probably not clean, and it's always freezing cold because you stored it in a wooden bucket outside. Most people drink ale or weak beer, including kids. Not to get drunk, just to avoid the parasites in the well. Wine exists, but not for you, and milk is for animals. Unless you're desperate, which you are. So congratulations, you're now arguing with a goat while trying to steal breakfast from under her. You finish your meal, such as it is, still hungry, still cold, but slightly less likely to collapse. Your hands are stained from the pot. Your breath smells like onion and hopelessness. There's no dessert, no nap, no second helping, just dishes to scrape, and another reminder that the food wasn't made for joy. It was made for survival, and you're still here, which, in medieval winter, is its own kind of miracle. So your throat's sore, your nose is running. You've developed a cough that sounds like it was exhaled from a 400-year-old chimney. Congratulations, you're now entering the part of winter where your body starts breaking down, and absolutely no one has the tools to fix it. Your immune system is tired, your joints hurt, and your left foot might be developing something that looks suspiciously like frostbite. Good times. Let's start with medicine, or more accurately, the medieval interpretation of it. There's no concept of germs, bacteria or viruses. What you've got is a vague sense of bad air and a theory that your body's four humors, blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, are out of whack. The standard cure? Balance them, which means you might get bled, purged, or fed something boiled in urine. Yes, actual urine, often someone else's. Healthcare in the 1300s was a gamble, and most people lost. You could see a barber surgeon, if there's one nearby. He'll offer to lance a boil, pull a tooth, or saw something off. Clean tools? Don't be cute. Anesthetic? You're hilarious. Maybe he's got leeches, always a favorite. Or maybe he'll just tell you to pray harder. Because for many, real healing doesn't come from herbs or hands. It comes from God. And if he hasn't fixed you yet, that's probably on you. Maybe there's a local wise woman, or herbalist, someone who knows what plants to rub on your forehead or which moldy root to chew. They're your best shot at relief. But they're also one complaint away from being accused of witchcraft. If the priest hears you're relying on anyone but him, there's a non-zero chance you'll end up tied to a stake. So your options are suffer loudly with the church's approval, or suffer quietly and hope the herbs work before the Inquisition knocks. Even if someone wants to help, they don't have much to work with. There's no clean bandages, no sterile anything, no heating pad, no rest. You still have to work, still have to walk, still have to feed livestock, cook food, carry wood. Your body doesn't get a break just because it's falling apart. You're in pain? That's winter. Your fingers are swollen and turning colors? Better use your teeth to tie that rope. To make matters worse, there are no records, no way to track symptoms, no idea what's contagious. One day it's a cough, the next it's a village funeral. Disease doesn't spread silently, it explodes. Colds become chest infections, infections become sepsis. Someone starts vomiting, and suddenly half the town's lighting candles, and nobody knows what caused it. Was it bad air? Was it that turnip from 3 weeks ago? Was it sin? Best not to ask. So when your back aches, and your teeth throb, and you're coughing blood into a rag that used to be a sock, there's no hotline to call. No ibuprofen, no tea with honey, just a straw mattress, a smoky ceiling, and your family pretending not to notice how pale you've gotten. You lie there, you shake, you wait. Maybe it passes, maybe it doesn't. In medieval winter, that's medicine, and survival is a coin toss. You flip with frozen fingers. At some point in the middle of this long, frozen ordeal, you notice something strange. You have no idea what time it is, not just in a what's the hour kind of way, in a has it been 4 days or one very bad afternoon kind of way. Because medieval winter doesn't run on clocks. It runs on vague guesses, dim light, and the slow crawl of your own patience. The sun is gone. Not completely, but close. It shows up late, dragging itself over the hills like it doesn't want to be here either. It stays low in the sky, casting a gray, lifeless light for a few hours, then vanishes before you've finished your chores. Days are short, nights are endless, and without artificial lighting, everything becomes guesswork. You eat when the fire's hot, you sleep when the cold wins. You wake up when something loud or wet or painful demands it. There's no watch on your wrist, no clock on the wall. Monasteries might ring bells, but unless you live near one, good luck. Farmers judge time by the position of the sun, except there's no visible sun. It's hidden behind clouds, fog, and the general sense that the sky gave up. Sometimes you think it's morning, and it turns out it's almost evening. Other times you're convinced it's midnight and it's just 4 p.m. And your body? It's just as confused. It doesn't get proper sleep anymore. No one does. You drift in and out, freezing, coughing, waking up hungry, too cold to move. You lie in the dark and think, has it been hours? Days? You start to lose the ability to separate moments. Everything becomes one long loop of smoke, wind, sore throats, and bad bread. You used to know what Thursday felt like. Now every day is just gray. You ask someone else what day it is. They don't know either. The church calendar helps. Feast days, saints' days, holy observances, but even that feels disconnected. Candlemas, Epiphany, some other Latin thing. It might as well be fiction. All you know is the fire needs more wood. The cow hasn't eaten, and your back is screaming. Your personal sense of time has broken into 1,000 tiny, icy pieces. Eventually, even your memory starts to betray you. Did you feed the animals already? Did you chop wood yesterday or the day before? Did you eat lunch, or did you just think about eating it? When everything is dim and miserable, your brain starts filling in the blanks with guesses. You start telling stories to yourself just to stay sane. Tomorrow will be warmer, the days are getting longer, spring always comes eventually. Lies, necessary ones. So yes, time loses meaning, the sun's gone, the schedule is gone, your routines dissolve. What's left is survival, hour by frozen hour. You can't plan, you can't prepare, you can't even count how many days you've been cold. You just exist, waiting for warmth, waiting for light, waiting for something to change. But winter in the Middle Ages doesn't care about your internal clock. It just keeps going. And so must you. You're cold, obviously. But unlike today, there's no central heating, no radiator ticking gently behind you, no knob you can turn. If you want warmth, you earn it. Not with a button, not with a remote, but with your spine. Firewood doesn't appear by magic. If you want a fire, you're going to have to feed it. That means chopping, stacking, hauling, every single day with hands that can't feel their own fingertips. First comes the wood itself. You can't just pick it up from the store. You go into the forest, assuming you're allowed. Many woods are owned by lords, abbots, or the crown. Taking wood without permission can get you fined, beaten, or thrown in the stocks. So unless your village has designated gleaning rights, your firewood either comes from your own trees if you're very lucky, fallen branches if you're sneaky, or barter with someone who's better armed than you are. Let's say you've got legal access. Great! Now get ready to work. The axe you use is dull, the handle is cracked, the blade is chipped. It was your grandfather's, and he probably inherited it too. Chopping wood in winter isn't scenic, it's agony. Your feet slip, your breath fogs, your fingers go numb under mitts that don't really deserve the name. You swing, miss, swing again, feel the vibration in your shoulder socket, and keep going. Once chopped, it's time to carry. Your arms are already jelly from the axe. Too bad, because that fire you're so fond of. It eats logs like a starving beast, especially in winter when every spark vanishes into the cold air and every breeze steals your heat. So you carry armfuls, or if you have a sled or wheelbarrow, you drag loads through the slush and snow, praying you don't trip and snap your ankle on a hidden rock. No fire means no warmth. No warmth means frostbite. When you finally get inside, panting and coated in snowflakes, your reward is modest. The fire sputters. You kneel, blowing on it like it's your firstborn. You arrange twigs, bark, bits of kindling you hopefully remembered to dry. It catches, maybe. You feed it your hard-earned logs one at a time, listening to the hiss and crackle. Slowly the room warms. A little. The fire heats the air directly around it. Beyond that, still freezing. So you sit close, maybe too close. And then the smoke starts. Because medieval chimneys, if you even have one, are barely functional. The flue is narrow, the draft is wrong, smoke leaks back into the room, seeping into your clothes, your lungs, your eyes. You cough, you blink, but you don't stop, because a smoky fire is still a fire, and it's better than nothing. Barely. And this is your job, every day, over and over, until your back is wrecked and your gloves are ruined, until the pile runs low and you go back out again. There's no rest from it, no weekend off, just you, the cold, and the logs you have to earn before they'll save your life. You want to be warm? Prove it. You might have noticed by now that everything, and we do mean everything, smells like smoke. Your shirt, your hair, your fingernails, your entire personality. Smoke isn't just in the room with you. It is the room. It's in your lungs, in your pores. It's probably braided into your tunic at this point, and no matter how many layers of snow you fall into, it will not come out. Here's why. Medieval fires didn't burn clean. You're working with damp wood, cracked hearths, and chimneys that were designed mostly to disappoint. If you're a peasant, you may not even have a real chimney, just a smoke hole in the ceiling and a prayer. That means the smoke from every fire, cooking, heating, light, just drifts into the room and stays there. The air is thick, your eyes sting, your nose runs, but no one complains because breathing smoke is still better than freezing. The clothes you're wearing, they've absorbed enough smoke to be considered partially flammable. You can't wash them, at least not more than once a season, so every smoky night just adds another layer of scent to your personal bouquet. You might try hanging them up to air out, but they'll just absorb whatever new smoke is in the room. And outside? Too cold. So congratulations, your fashion line is now Eau de Bonfire Misery by Peasant Number 5. Your hair is worse. It traps smoke like it's auditioning for a chimney sweep role in a local tragedy. You don't bathe enough to do anything about it. Maybe you run some melted snow through it. Maybe you rub some lard in to keep it from matting. But the smell stays. People around you don't even notice anymore. Everyone smells the same, except the one guy who fell in the latrine last week. He has his own orbit. And the house, if you can call it that, is permanently seasoned. The walls are stained. The thatch above your head has turned gray. The ceiling drips tar in places. Every meal you cook tastes faintly of ash. Every piece of bread comes with a crunchy layer of soot. You haven't seen white linen since Pentecost. Even your dreams smell like smoke. This isn't limited to the poor. Castles, same issue. Stone walls trap heat and smoke alike. Fires burn in great halls, chambers, kitchens, and bathhouses. Nobles sit in furs that haven't been cleaned in months, getting roasted on one side and frozen on the other. Their tapestries are embroidered with the history of their family and a thick coating of fireplace residue. The only difference is that their smoke comes with venison. So yes, welcome to your new scent. It's not romantic, it's not rustic, it's survival. You carry it with you everywhere, like a very clingy ghost, and in a world where baths are rare and perfume is made from crushed flowers you can't afford, there's no escaping it. You smell like fire, because fire is the only reason you're not dead yet. At some point, you've got to go outside. Again, maybe to haul water, maybe to relieve yourself, maybe to chase the neighbor's pig out of your firewood pile for the third time this week. But the moment you step out the door, winter hits you like a wall. The air is so cold it feels solid. It doesn't just sting your skin, it punches you in the teeth and dares you to keep breathing. Your nose is the first to go. One breath in, and it seizes up like it's trying to resign. The hairs inside your nostrils freeze instantly. They crackle when you sniff. Your upper lip goes numb, followed quickly by your cheeks, ears, and eyelids. The cold is surgical, precise, invasive, and entirely without mercy. You blink, and your tears freeze before they finish forming. If the wind picks up, and it always does, it slices through your hood like it's not even there. Wool can trap heat, but it can't block wind. Not really. So the side of your face facing the breeze goes pink, then red, then pale, then nothing, numb. It stops sending signals. You slap your cheek and feel nothing. That's not good. That's the body checking out. Your lips stop working next. You try to talk, and your words slur. Not because you're drunk, but because the muscles around your mouth aren't responding properly. You bite your tongue by accident. Your jaw aches from the effort of holding itself closed. If you try to smile, unlikely, but theoretically, the skin around your mouth feels like it might crack. By the time you've been outside for more than a few minutes, your body's sending you mixed signals. You're shivering violently, but also sweating. Your skin is flushed, but also hardening. This is the warm-up act for frostbite. You can't feel your nose anymore. Your ears are just decorations at this point. You press a hand to your face, and it feels like someone else's. That's not poetic. That's terrifying. You rush to finish whatever job you were doing, feeding animals, hauling logs, dumping waste, but you've already lost the feeling in your hands, and now your face is following. You can't afford to stay out longer. You can't afford to stay inside either, because that means not getting the work done. You stare at the frozen horizon, blink frost out of your lashes, and wonder if this is how statues are made, from people who just stopped. And when you finally stumble back indoors, the cold doesn't let go. It clings. It follows. Your face begins to thaw, and that's somehow worse. It burns. It itches. It pulses like it's trying to detach from your skull. You sit by the fire, but the heat feels cruel now. You've earned this misery. You chose to walk outside, and in medieval winter, that was always a risk. You need water. For cooking, for drinking, for not dying. But in medieval winter, water isn't something that waits politely in a pipe. It doesn't pour with the twist of a handle. It hides. It freezes. It dares you to come find it. Every day, multiple times a day, someone has to fetch it. And if that someone is you, congratulations. You now get to start your morning by braving the cold and arguing with a wooden bucket. Step 1. Get to the source. If your village has a well, it's already covered in a thick lid of ice. You break it with whatever blunt instrument is available, a rock, a stick, your own battered soul. If you live near a stream or pond, you're trekking through frost, snow, and possibly a field of frozen manure just to reach it. And when you get there, same problem. Ice thick enough to walk on? You chip at it like a desperate woodpecker, knowing the water underneath is only going to hurt you. Assuming you break through, it's time to scoop. This sounds easy. It isn't. Your hands are stiff. Your gloves, if you have any, are soaked within seconds. The bucket is made of warped wood held together by iron hoops that contract in the cold. It leaks. You can never fill it completely because the water sloshes out every time you take a step. Every splash that hits your leg becomes an ice patch. Every drop that freezes on the handle makes it harder to carry. Now, carry it back, over slippery ground, up icy steps, across yards full of invisible hazards. If your feet slip, you fall, and the water goes flying. There's no refilling from the tap. You go all the way back and start over. And even if you don't fall, your arms are shaking before you're halfway home. A full bucket weighs 40 pounds or more. Your back hates you. Your spine feels like it's made of frozen rope. Inside, the water isn't safe. You don't have a warm kitchen or a thermos to keep it liquid. It starts freezing again almost immediately. You put it by the fire, but there's only so much room. Most of it goes in a pot. If you need hot water, you wait and wait and watch the soot from the fire mix with the water you just nearly died collecting. But you drink it anyway because your choices are limited and your throat is drier than your hopes for spring. If you're storing water for later, good luck. There's no insulation, no plastic jugs, no heated pipes. Everything freezes. You cover the bucket with cloth, wrap it in straw, place it near a warm body, and still, it freezes. You wake up in the morning to find the bucket frozen solid, the ladle stuck inside, and your day starting again with a sledgehammer and a sigh. And you'll do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. Because fire needs water, food needs water, you need water. And unless you've invented plumbing 800 years early, this is your life. Welcome to the medieval hydration routine. Chop, carry, curse, repeat. The cold isn't just something you feel anymore. It's something you are. At first, it was discomfort, then pain, then a kind of numb stillness that settled into your bones like it signed a lease. You wake up and you're already shivering. Not because the fire went out, though it probably did, but because there's no longer any memory in your body of what it means to be warm. Warmth is a dream now, a fairy tale, a story you once heard. Your breath clouds the air like ghost mist every time you exhale, and your fingers, despite the layers, feel like chalk. You flex them and they don't bend right. Your joints creak like wood, and every time you touch your face, it's like patting cold meat. The fire doesn't fix it, the blankets don't help, and even the thought of spring feels absurd, like a prank the seasons are playing on you. Your skin, once something you trusted to keep you contained, now betrays you. It cracks, it peels, it bleeds if you tug your sock too hard or rub your hand the wrong way. Your lips split open mid-sentence. You taste blood, then nothing. Your feet are always wet, somehow, whether from snow or sweat trapped inside thick wool, and that wetness freezes the moment you stop moving. You've started to walk stiffly, like an old man, even if you're barely 20. It's not for effect. It's because your muscles aren't working right. There's a cold deep in your core now. Not on the surface, deeper. A chilling of the soul. Your body has officially filed a complaint, and it's doing its best to shut systems down. Warmth has become something abstract. You speak of it the way people speak of a dream they once had and lost. You describe it to others like it's a distant country. Remember when you could feel your toes? Remember when the wind didn't stab? Around the hearth, people talk about last summer, like it was a different lifetime. The warmth of the sun, the soft dirt, the sweat you used to curse. You'd give anything for it now, but you don't say that out loud, not often. It feels risky, like inviting cruelty from the cold itself. Even inside, you don't trust the fire. It flickers and cracks, but it doesn't promise anything. You've sat too many nights beside it and still felt the cold in your chest. You've seen it die in the early hours, and you've had to fumble through the blackness, trying to relight it before frost crept into the corners of the baby's blanket. You know now that fire is fragile. It's a guest, not a guarantee. You hover near it, but you don't relax. Not really. You just lower your expectations and pretend that a little less suffering is the same as comfort. Your clothes are layered, a tunic, a second tunic, a rough wool cloak, but there's no insulation. Everything itches, everything stinks. The heat your body does produce gets wicked away by damp cloth and wind slipping through seams. You've taken to stuffing straw in places it doesn't belong just to add padding. People wrap their feet in rags. They shove dried moss into the lining of their shoes. Not because it helps, it doesn't, but because doing something feels better than doing nothing. The cold makes you desperate, and desperation makes you inventive in humiliating ways. Sleep no longer restores you. It used to be rest. Now it's just unconscious shivering. You wake up with frozen toes and fingers curled into claws. Your spine feels like it's been carved from ice. You're constantly tired, but sleep never really comes. You drift, then jerk awake at a new sound. Wind, rats, someone coughing. The darkness is so complete that you lose track of where you are. Sometimes you dream of warmth, but more often you dream of freezing. That or hunger, or both. Your mind is becoming a mirror of your body, slow, aching, and dulled by the cold. And the worst part, the very worst part, is the doubt. You start to ask yourself, was it ever warm? Did summer really happen? Or did you invent it to make this seem bearable? You know intellectually that the seasons turn, that warmth returns. But your bones don't believe it. Your memory doesn't believe it. And the cold seems infinite. It's everywhere. It's everything. And you're still here, but you don't know how many more hours you can go without remembering what it feels like to stop shivering. The outside world has become a frozen wasteland, and your house, if you can call it that, is now your prison. Congratulations, you live in one room with 6 other people, 2 goats, a handful of chickens, and the increasingly loud sound of everyone losing their minds. There are no doors to slam, no rooms to escape to, no headphones, no screens, no escape, just people, breathing, snoring, complaining, constant. Privacy is not a concept here. You share everything. Meals, sleep, conversation, air. You hear everything everyone says, including the things you wish you hadn't. Arguments flare up over nothing. Who took the last dry stick of firewood? Who left the door cracked? Who farted near the stew pot? You try to ignore it, but there's nowhere to go. You sit there, wrapped in a cloak, pretending you're not about to strangle your uncle with a length of damp straw. It's not personal. It's just survival instincts clashing under one smoky roof. Boredom doesn't even begin to cover it. Winter has cut off the fields, the roads, the markets, and any excuse to get away from your family. There are no books, no hobbies, no leisurely winter crafts, unless you count scraping mold off the walls or trying to patch your only pair of socks for the 10th time. Every task is done together, which means every task is done loudly. Someone's always humming off-key. Someone's always coughing. Someone's always narrating their thoughts out loud, like they're performing a one-man medieval play. The children are climbing things they shouldn't. The adults are snapping at shadows. Even the animals are restless. The goats keep headbutting the door. The chickens have started pecking each other bald. And you're not entirely sure the cat didn't just try to smother itself in the laundry pile. The house smells like smoke, feet, onions, damp fur, and slowly simmering rage. And this is normal. This is just how people spent winter. You eat together in silence, or forced small talk, then sit by the fire and pretend you don't resent each other. There's no time apart, so grudges don't fade, they ferment. That thing your cousin did last summer? Still annoying? That time your sister borrowed your cloak and stained it with pig's blood? Somehow more infuriating now than it was then. Every shared memory becomes ammunition. Every breath someone takes is a personal offense. You try to keep the peace, because open conflict is exhausting and no one wants to go outside to cool off, literally. But even kindness begins to feel like work. You hold your tongue. You nod instead of argue. You pretend you didn't hear the muttering from the corner. But tension builds like pressure in a sealed pot. Eventually someone snaps. A bowl is slammed down. A prayer is said a little too loudly. A door is opened just long enough to shout into the void. Then it goes quiet again, but no one relaxes. You all just sit there, waiting for the next crack in the dam. And it's only January. You're lying awake again, wrapped in every blanket you own, blinking at the darkness and trying not to breathe too loudly. The fire is low, the wind is howling, and from somewhere in the wall, or maybe the roof, you hear it, scratching, faint, then louder, a brief scuffle, then silence, then scratching again. You freeze. Everyone else is asleep or pretending to be. You, on the other hand, are very aware that something is moving around in the structure of your house, and it probably has teeth. Your home is not sealed. It's not insulated. It's barely standing. The walls are a patchwork of wattle and daub, basically mud and sticks. The roof is thatched. The doors are crooked slabs of wood, with gaps wide enough to admit a determined squirrel and several of his friends. In summer, this is just annoying. In winter, it's a full-on invasion. Anything warm-blooded and hungry wants in. Rats, mice, weasels, birds, things you can't name, and they find ways. You might have stored food in a box or a cloth sack hung from the ceiling. Doesn't matter. They can smell it, they will chew through it, they will leave droppings in it, and then they'll stare you dead in the eye from across the room like it's their house now. Because in many ways it is. They've been here longer, they're better adapted. You have one layer of clothing and a cold floor. They have fur, tunnels, and an uncanny ability to survive on crumbs and desperation. Sometimes they fall into things. The roof creaks and something plummets into the fireplace. One minute you're stirring your gruel, the next you're trying to fish a burning rat out of the stew pot, while your grandmother screams and the children laugh. Or you find something dead in the water bucket, or you hear them in the bedding, under the bedding. One winter, your cousin got bitten in his sleep. The bite got infected. He lost a toe. He swears it was a devil. Everyone else swears it was a rat. Either way, he limps now. You try to patch the holes, You stuff rags into cracks, shove rocks into gaps, hang bits of dried herbs to ward them off. Nothing works. They're too many, and you're too tired. If you have a cat, it helps, but only so much. Cats in winter aren't just pets, they're frontline defense. But even the best mouser gets overwhelmed. You watch your cat get into a standoff with something in the thatch, both of them frozen, tails twitching, eyes glowing. You don't interfere. This is above your pay grade. And it's not just the sound, it's the feeling. The sense that something is always moving just out of sight. You catch shadows near the ceiling, hear scrapes behind your head, smell something musky under the bed that wasn't there yesterday. You tell yourself it's normal. Everyone deals with it. But then you remember the story, the one about the boy who fell asleep too close to the wall and woke up with blood on his collar. You hope it's just a story, but you sleep away from the walls now. This is medieval winter. You don't just fight cold, you fight the house itself. Its bones, its hollows, the creatures that live in its corners. You are not alone, not ever, not in the way you wish you were. It starts slow. You're tired, but that's normal. Everyone's tired. Then you're dizzy. Then your hands won't stop shaking. Then you stand up, and the room swims sideways and your knees buckle. You think maybe you're coming down with something. A fever, maybe. A chill. Something going around. But no one else is coughing. No one else is flushed. Then it hits you. You're not sick. You're hungry. Or more precisely, you're malnourished to the point that your body is shutting off parts of itself to conserve energy. Medieval winter doesn't bring a lot of food. Whatever grain you stored from the last harvest has probably started to go moldy, or it's run low, or it's been eaten by rats. Vegetables? Gone. Meat? Only if something recently died. And you'd know because you would have smelled it. There's nothing growing. There's nothing to forage. And no one's bringing anything from town, because the roads are either blocked with snow or full of people even hungrier than you. The cold doesn't just freeze your fingers, it freezes supply chains. So you're eating what's left. Bread made from questionable flour, broth made from bones that have already been boiled twice, thin pottage with nothing but weeds and salt. You drink a lot of water to fill the gaps. You lie about being full. You scrape the sides of the pot with your fingernail. You eat the crumbs off your shirt. Your stomach stops growling, but not because it's satisfied. It's given up complaining. Even hunger takes energy. And you don't have any of that left. Your body starts to cannibalize itself. Fat goes first, then muscle, then clarity. You forget what you were doing mid-task. You get winded hauling firewood and have to sit down in the snow, hands on knees, gasping like you just ran uphill. Your clothes feel looser, but not in a good way. Your belt doesn't need tightening anymore. Your eyes sink in. Your skin flakes. You look older because starvation doesn't care about dignity. It strips you down to function. And then it takes that too. The children go quiet. That's how you know it's serious. No one's chasing chickens. No one's whining. They just lie there, under blankets that smell like mildew, chewing slowly or not chewing at all. One of them has a nosebleed that won't stop. Another hasn't had a proper bowel movement in days. You don't talk about it. There's no point. You just keep looking at the food shelf, hoping something will appear. It never does. You start having food dreams. Banquets, apples, cheese, roasted meat with juice running down your fingers. You wake up with your mouth moving. One man swears he smelled bacon. You all laugh. Then you all stop. No one's had bacon since All Saints' Day. No one will again, until Easter maybe. You try not to think about it. You tell yourself this is normal. This is what everyone goes through, but some don't come out of it. They stop eating because there's nothing left, and then they stop waking up. And you quietly rearrange the room so you're sleeping closest to the bread, just in case. Because this isn't a stomachache. This isn't being peckish. This is hunger, medieval style. And it doesn't ask politely. It doesn't give you space. It crawls in and makes itself at home. And if you're not very lucky, or very clever, or very strong, it stays. It creeps up on you. First it's fatigue, nothing new in winter. You wake up tired, you go to bed tired, and at some point, the two start to blur. Then you notice your limbs are heavier than they should be. You drop things, you move slowly, like everything has to be double-checked with your muscles. A step feels like 3, but still, you don't think much of it. Everyone is worn out, everyone's cold. But then the dizziness starts. You stand too quickly, and the world tilts. You're sweating in your shirt even though it's freezing. Your skin looks pale, almost gray. You think you're falling ill, that something infectious has crept in with the wind. But no one else is sick, just you. And that's when someone says it. You're starving. It lands like a joke. You laugh, but then you realize you haven't eaten a full meal in days, maybe longer. You're not sick, you're just running on empty. And your body is filing complaints in all the places you were too numb to notice. By January, most of the stored food is either gone or barely edible. The grain sacks you filled in the fall have grown light, and when you scoop from the bottom, you see movement. Bugs, larvae, dust. You try to ignore it. You blow out the worst of it. What's a few insects in the stomach when the alternative is nothing? Root vegetables? What's left is soft, spotted, beginning to rot. But you carve the bad parts off and stew the rest. There's no spice to hide the taste. Salt is precious, too precious to waste on a turnip with personality issues. Meat is a memory. If you had livestock, maybe you culled one early in the season. A pig, a goat. You stretched it out, salted and smoked it, hoped it would last. It didn't. You boiled the bones, then you reboiled them. Then you started boiling anything that might once have touched meat. You chew more for the illusion than the flavor. The fire does more warming than the food. Hunger rewires your brain. It strips away the surface layers of thought and makes every moment about the next bite. You dream of meals you've never had. You hallucinate the smell of cooking. You see bread in the patterns of the wood grain. You chew your fingernails and wonder if there's anything useful in the skin. Not enough to matter. You pretend you're fine. Everyone does. You say things like, "I'm not that hungry," or "I had something earlier." Lies. Everyone knows they're lies. But you say them anyway. Because the truth is too heavy to carry. The truth is that you're weak. Your body is burning itself to stay alive. First the fat, then the muscle. Your arms look smaller. Your face is drawn. Your belt doesn't hold the same way. You don't tighten it anymore. You just let it hang loose. It's not fashion, it's survival. The cold makes it worse. It multiplies the damage. Every shiver takes energy. Every effort to stay warm burns what little you have. You wrap yourself in every scrap of wool and cloth, not because it helps much, but because you're afraid of what might happen if you don't. Your fingertips go white, then blue. You rub them together, trying to convince your body to keep blood flowing there. Your stomach knots, not with cramps, not exactly. It's a dull, gnawing throb that never stops. The fire crackles, but it feels more like a joke than a comfort. A bowl of thin pottage sits in your lap, mostly water, a few grains, maybe a sliver of onion. You sip it like it's treasure. You scrape the bottom with your spoon. You lick the spoon. You lick the bowl. The heat helps, but it doesn't reach your bones. Nothing does. You stay cold, and you stay hungry, and they feed each other like rats in a cellar. People begin to change. The children stop playing. They sit quietly, conserving what little energy they have. Their faces are slack. They cry less, because crying takes strength. The elderly stop speaking as much. They move less. Sometimes they lie down and don't get back up until someone nudges them. You hear coughing that doesn't stop. You see lips turning gray, but no one says the word. No one says starvation. It's too final, too real. So instead you say he's tired, or she hasn't been herself. And in a way, it's true. Hunger doesn't just take your body. It takes your identity, your patience, your humor, your will. You start seeing your neighbors differently. Who still has a cellar with sealed jars? Who hasn't seemed to lose weight? Who's still smiling? You hate yourself for thinking it, but you think it. There are moments, brief ones, where things seem okay. Someone finds a forgotten turnip in a basket. Someone barters for a heel of bread with a neighbor. Someone manages to trap a rabbit. Small, skinny, barely meat on bone, but still meat. The entire household watches it roast. It's almost ceremonial. Everyone gets a piece the size of a thumb, and no one complains. You chew slowly. You close your eyes. You let it sit on your tongue until it dissolves. And for a few minutes, things feel survivable, but it doesn't last. The hunger comes back. It always comes back. And now, somehow, it's worse, because you remember what fullness almost felt like. And then the ideas start. Not out loud, not in the open, but quietly, silently. Desperate ideas. The dog went missing last week. The chickens stopped laying and aren't good for much else. A cousin hasn't left his bed in days. You remember stories, old ones about hard winters and unthinkable acts. You tell yourself you'd never, but the fact that you're even telling yourself that is the red flag. The line moves, slowly, quietly. No one crosses it all at once. They shuffle closer, day by day. You try not to look at your hands, at your neighbor's pot, at the child who hasn't spoken in a week. You're not sick, you're starving. And medieval winter doesn't care. It doesn't stop for morality or pride or shame. It just keeps pressing in. Cold from above, hunger from within. And you, somewhere in the middle, wondering what you'll still recognize about yourself when the thaw finally comes, if it comes at all. You don't think much of it at first. A candle burns out, no big deal. Then another. Then someone knocks the last one over trying to chase out a rat, and the tallow splatters across the dirt floor, wasted. You go to the storage shelf and find what you already knew. It's empty. The wax is gone. The oil's gone too. Whatever scraps of light you had left are gone, and now when the sun goes down, so does everything else. Darkness used to be a choice. Now it's the law, and it is a very strict, very suffocating law. Night falls early, fast, and without negotiation. You don't get a dusk anymore. You get a wall of blackness. It swallows everything. The ceiling disappears. The corners of the room vanish. The only thing left is firelight, if you still have firewood, and the dim glow from the embers which make everything look haunted. You huddle around it, the family a ring of faces half lit, eyes gleaming like animals at the edge of a forest. Then the fire dies down too. You think you can adjust, that your eyes will adapt, but they don't, not really. Medieval darkness isn't just the absence of light, it's the presence of fear. You start to imagine shapes in the corners, sounds you can't place. Was that the wind? Was that breathing? You don't ask. You don't want to know. You just pull your blanket tighter and pretend it's your imagination, except it's not. The house creaks. The thatch above shifts. You hear something soft scuttle across the packed earth. It's probably a rat, hopefully. You hear someone muttering in their sleep. Someone else groans. You can't tell who. Everyone's face is just a blur now. You used to be able to make out their expressions by firelight. Now you're relying on tone. That whisper was annoyed. That one was scared. That silence. That's what worries you most. In daylight, the world feels hard and cruel. In darkness, it feels like a trap. There's no movement, no chores, no escape. Time stops. You sit still because moving risks knocking something over or stepping on someone, or worse, attracting attention. From what? You don't know, but the stories your grandmother told are suddenly loud in your head. Spirits, night devils, forest hags who crawl under doors. You never believed them? Not really, but belief isn't a switch, it's a slope. And in this kind of dark, you're already sliding. You say your prayers, quietly, more out of habit than hope. You say them twice. You forget some of the words. You say them again, just in case. Then you sit. You wait. You listen. Someone starts humming. It's not tuneful. It's not pleasant. It's just something to fill the air. They hum until someone tells them to stop. Then the silence grows thick again. You swear you hear footsteps, but no one moves. You check your breath to make sure you're not imagining things. You start to count, not for any reason, just to do something. You lose track around 50 and start again. At some point, your eyes start to play tricks on you. You blink, and it looks like the wall is closer than it should be. You close your eyes. It's worse. Your mind starts pulling up old fears, old memories, things you buried deep because they didn't fit in daylight. But now they're back. In the dark, everything you locked away has the key. The youngest child wakes up crying. No one scolds her. Everyone is too grateful for the sound. Even fear is better than the silence. Someone shifts to comfort her, knocking over a cup. It rolls, hits the wall, makes a hollow clunk, then quiet again. You used to laugh at ghost stories. Now you wish you had one to tell. Something familiar, something with a beginning, middle, and end. Instead, you have this. 7 people in one room, holding their breath, afraid of the dark and each other. You think about the stars, but your roof is solid. You think about the moon, but it's cloudy. And even if it wasn't, the window's too small to see it from your mat. You are in a box, a very cold, very old box. And outside that box is more dark. You tell yourself the sun will come back. You tell yourself that every night, but you don't really know. The worst part isn't what you see, it's what you remember seeing. A shadow that passed too quickly, a glint of light where there shouldn't have been any, an echo with no voice. And then the dreams start. You don't fall asleep, so much as black out. Your mind doesn't settle, it drops. You dream of long halls, of being buried, of being chased through thick forests with no path. You wake up sweating, cold, confused. It's still night. Of course it is. You don't know how long. There's no clock. You can't ask. Everyone else is sleeping, or pretending to. You lie still. You count again. You tell yourself this is normal. People lived like this for generations. You try to believe it, but it feels like something no one should have ever survived. And this is what people meant when they said winter was hard. It's not just the hunger, not just the cold. It's the hours, the long, crushing, silent hours. When the mind starts talking to itself, when the dark stops being absence and starts being company, the kind that doesn't knock before it enters, the kind that never leaves. It's supposed to be a time of reflection, of joy, of spiritual renewal. At least that's what the priest said 3 Sundays ago when he shouted his sermon through the wind outside the chapel door. You remember catching about half of it, something about light in darkness, hope during hardship, giving thanks for salvation. It all sounded lovely, if a little theoretical, while your nose was turning blue and your toes had gone completely silent from the cold. The problem is, holy seasons still happen during unholy winters. And while the calendar says it's time for faith and celebration, your body says it's time to conserve warmth and avoid crying because tears will freeze. Inside the house, someone tries to get festive. A song, maybe. A clumsy attempt at caroling. Except no one remembers the words, and everyone's voice is scratchy from breathing in smoke and sleeping in corners. Someone places a sprig of dried greenery in the rafters. Someone else finds a bit of red thread and ties it around a broom handle. It's not much, but it's something. Even the bleakest midwinter has its traditions, and you cling to them, not because they work, but because they're all you have. You light a candle, even if it's the last one. You whisper old prayers. You try to pretend the scratching behind the walls is part of the season's charm. Then comes the fasting. Yes, the church says feasting is for after the holy day. The weeks leading up to it, those are for restraint. As if restraint hasn't already been forced on you by an empty pantry and a frozen landscape. Now it's not just survival, it's spiritual discipline. You eat half the usual, which is already barely anything. You avoid meat, as required. You tell yourself it's for a higher purpose, but mostly it feels like malnutrition in a cassock. And the worst part? When the feast day actually arrives, there's nothing left to celebrate with. You didn't store goose. You don't have a roast. You boil what you have, maybe a few dried peas, maybe some root vegetables that haven't gone soft. It's the thought that counts, you suppose. Even if the thought tastes like dirt and disappointment. The priest visits your home once during the season, wrapped in a fur cloak that looks newer than anything you've ever owned. He blesses the hearth, sprinkles some water that might be holy or just melted snow, and says something about divine providence. You nod because you're supposed to. He doesn't stay long. The house is too cold. You're not sure what he sees when he looks around. Probably the same thing you do. A few scraps of color, some half-hearted decorations, the glassy-eyed stare of people trying very hard to believe. He blesses you, then he leaves. And you sit in the silence, wondering what blessing even means when the soup is thin and the roof leaks. You try to keep up appearances. You help the children recite lines of scripture they don't understand. You join the prayers. You sing the hymns softly, because your voice cracks when you push it. You remember stories of saints who endured great hardship, and you try to imagine yourself among them. But their tales always end in miracles. Yours just rolls into another dark evening, another stomachache, another night of waiting for warmth that never quite arrives. Faith is harder when it's cold. Harder still when your neighbor's child hasn't stood up in 3 days and no one's talking about it. Still, you carry on. Because you have to. Because stopping would be louder than continuing. And because somewhere beneath the ash and bone of winter, a tiny ember of belief still flickers, maybe not in miracles, but in survival, in stubbornness, in the idea that there's still a spring waiting on the other side of this. Even if you never get to see it, you think maybe that's what the holy season is really about. Not joy, not peace, just enduring. Enduring long enough that someday someone else can sing the right words, light the right candle, and mean it. At first, you notice the cold. Now you don't. And that's not a victory. It's a warning. Because the cold didn't leave, your body just stopped responding. Somewhere in the fog of freezing nights, thin soup, and too many lost hours curled up like a root vegetable in a corner, your nerves went quiet. Your fingers don't hurt anymore. Your toes don't sting. That would almost feel like a blessing if you didn't know what it meant. Numbness is your body's last line of defense, and you're past it. Now you move like a half-filled scarecrow. Slow, clumsy, indifferent. You're not cold anymore because your body's already started giving up. Your breath doesn't cloud as much as it used to. At least, not that you can see. The fire is barely more than ash now. You try to blow on it, but your lips won't purse right. Someone else is trying to. You can't tell who. It's too dark, and you're too tired to ask. You watch them lean over the hearth, fingers shaking, and for a moment you wonder if they're still breathing. Then they cough. Okay, still here. Barely. You wrap your arms tighter around yourself, not because it helps, but because it feels like something you should do. Instinct, habit, desperation, wearing the mask of comfort. Your feet are the worst. Or maybe your hands? It's hard to tell. You stopped feeling them last night. This morning they're purple, swollen in some places, stiff in others. You press a finger into your palm, and nothing happens. No bounce back, no pain, just cold skin over colder bone. You remember someone, maybe your grandfather, talking about winter fingers when you were little, how the flesh turns waxy, how you should never rub them too hard or bring them too close to the fire. It's too late for that now. The damage is done. You feel brittle, like a dropped apple that looks fine but turns to mush when picked up. You keep your gloves on even though they don't help. They're more ceremonial now than practical, a nod to the idea of warmth. You're not the only one. Everyone in the house is slowing down. No one moves unless they have to. The morning chores are delayed, then skipped entirely. No one fetches water. No one checks the trap line. There's nothing out there anyway, just snow and the sound of branches breaking under frost. You all huddle in the same corner now, tighter, smaller, quieter. It used to be for warmth. Now it's just survival by proximity. One person coughs and no one even flinches. You've run out of energy to be startled, to be alarmed, to care. Sleep comes easily now. That's the most dangerous part. You sleep longer, deeper. You don't remember your dreams. You wake up only because someone shakes you. If they didn't, maybe you wouldn't. One of the children didn't open their eyes this morning until nearly noon. Their lips were pale. The breath was shallow. You wrapped them in every blanket you had left and put your own body over theirs, like a second quilt. The warmth didn't return right away. You had to wait. You had to pray. Not loudly, just quietly, in your head, to no one in particular. Eventually the child twitched. You exhaled. But the fear didn't leave. It doesn't leave anymore. You try to talk, to distract yourself. But the words come out slowly, like they're being fished from a frozen stream. Your mouth feels thick. Your thoughts are slow. You say someone's name wrong. You forget what day it is. Then you forget what day it was yesterday. Then you realize you don't care. The calendar stopped being useful weeks ago. Now there's just before the snow, and after the roof started leaking, and the night the last candle burned down. Those are your new time markers. You mark them in silence. No one else is speaking much either. Words take energy. So does listening. And maybe, just maybe, you understand now why so many didn't make it through winters like this. It's not because they were weak. It's not because they didn't try. It's because at some point, the cold stops being a thing outside you and becomes a part of you. You forget what warm feels like, and once you forget that, it's easy to forget everything else. It doesn't happen with drama. There's no thunder, no warning crack, just a soft, rotten noise, like wet fabric ripping. Then a sudden rush of cold, and everything goes white. You don't realize what it is at first. You think maybe the wind found a new gap in the wall. Maybe someone opened the door. But no, it's above you, the roof. A section of it has given up. The snow that's been piling on for days, weeks, maybe months. It finally won. It pressed down, seeped in, froze, thawed, and froze again, until the thatch turned into sponge and the beams snapped like bones under weight. The sky is open now, and the snow is falling in onto your bedding, your fire, your body. Just like that, you've lost the one thing between you and the storm. You scramble, but it's not fast. You're too cold to be fast. You throw a cloak over the hole, but it's laughable, like trying to bandage a broken leg with a leaf. Someone shouts. Someone else starts coughing. Not the usual dry hack, but a deep, painful one that rattles. The wind finds its way in almost instantly. It snakes through the hole and explores every part of the room like it's been waiting. Your little corner of warmth, already meager, is gone in seconds. The fire goes out with a hiss. Embers scatter like dying fireflies. You reach for more wood, but you burned most of it last night. The walls groan. There's snow on your blanket. There's snow on your food. There's snow on your face. You try to fix it. Of course you do. You grab what you can. A board from the wall, an old basket. Even the broken bench leg that used to be furniture before it was firewood. You climb up, teeth chattering, fingers barely working. The wind hits you like a slap. You shove the patchwork mess into the hole. It doesn't work. Snow keeps blowing in from the sides. The sky doesn't care about your effort. You climb back down. You sit. You listen. You wait, because that's all you can do now. No one is coming. Not today. Not tomorrow. Maybe not ever, because the snow isn't just here. It's everywhere. Roads are impassable. Tracks are gone. Villages go quiet this time of year, and that silence is a kind of death in itself. You think about going for help, but where? The next village is hours away on foot, and your boots have holes. You remember what happened the last time someone went for help in a storm. He didn't come back for 4 days. When he did, he was missing 2 fingers and couldn't speak above a whisper. You'd rather not become a story that starts with "remember when they tried." So you stay. You all stay, bundled in a damp room, under a broken roof, with the fire dead and the wind howling like a hungry dog just outside the door. You're not even hoping for rescue anymore. You're just hoping the collapse stops there, that the rest of the roof holds out, that no one gets crushed in their sleep. And so the house becomes smaller. Not physically, just emotionally. The corners become unreachable. The walls close in. You huddle closer to the center, closer to each other. One person starts to cry, but it's not loud. It's a tired cry. The kind that leaks out because there's no strength to hold it in. You don't comfort them, not because you don't care, because you don't know how. What do you say when the ceiling is gone and the sky is falling into your life? You just nod. Maybe you cry too. Maybe you don't. Either way, the cold sees it. The cold sees everything now. You think about spring again, not in the hopeful way, in the mathematical way. You start counting. Days left in the season. Days since your last warm night. Days until you think this house won't be standing at all. You used to count down to holy days, to weddings, to harvests. Now you count down to collapse. It's not a countdown anyone wants, but it's the only number you feel like you control. You tell yourself that tomorrow you'll fix the hole. Tomorrow you'll find better material. Tomorrow someone will come with help. But tomorrow is just a colder today, waiting in disguise. And in the quiet, you realize something terrible. The roof caving in wasn't the worst thing that could happen. The worst thing is realizing that even with the roof intact, this was always going to be the ending. This is winter, after all. It takes your heat, your food, your breath, and when you're left with nothing, it takes your shelter too. Not all at once. Just enough to remind you you were never safe, you were only lucky. And luck, like that roof, doesn't last forever. It's deep into the night. Not just late, medieval late. The kind of night where the moon is somewhere behind a ceiling of clouds, the fire's gone out for good, and your breath feels like it's freezing halfway out of your body. You're still, not by choice, but because movement takes energy you don't have. The others are asleep, or at least not talking. And in the silence, you hear something, a sound. Not close, not far. A howl. You freeze. Not because it's surprising, but because it isn't. You were expecting this, dreading it, and now it's here. But was it? You wait. You listen. Nothing. Then again, another one, or maybe the same. A long, rising wail in the dark, thin and sharp. It echoes off the hills like it's coming from everywhere at once. Wolves, maybe, or your memory of wolves. You can't be sure. Your ears have been playing tricks on you for days now. Creaking doors that weren't touched. Whispers no one spoke. But this feels real. Too loud, too long. You look to the others. No one stirs. No one reacts. Maybe they're just used to it. Maybe they're too tired to care. You pull the blanket higher. Not because it helps, but because it's the only barrier left between you and everything out there. There are no locks, no fences. The front door is little more than wood and hope. Wolves have been a problem all season, or so you've heard. They come down when they're hungry, and they're always hungry now. The same famine that's hollowed out your belly has emptied theirs. The forest doesn't feed them in winter, so they look elsewhere. Sheep, chickens, the occasional dog. Then, when all that's gone, they get bolder. You think about that one story, the one from 3 villages over, about the family who didn't make it, about the claw marks on the door, about how the boy tried to fight them with a poker and didn't make it more than 2 steps outside. You told yourself that was a rumor, a warning tale, something parents whispered to keep kids from wandering too far. But tonight, it doesn't feel like a story. It feels like a possibility. You rise slowly, joints aching like rusted hinges, and place one hand on the latch, just in case. You listen again. Silence. Then crunching. Snow under paws, maybe, or twigs, or your imagination inventing the noises your body expects. You stand there, hand on the door, until your legs tremble. Not from fear, from fatigue, from cold. You sit down. You tell yourself it's probably fine. Wolves don't usually attack people, not unless they're starving. But everything is starving now, even you. And if you were out there, desperate, thin, desperate for meat, wouldn't you be circling homes too? The line between man and beast feels a lot thinner in weather like this. Eventually the sounds fade, or you stop hearing them. The house is still. The snow is still. You let your head rest against the wall. It's cold, but no colder than anything else. You stare at the ceiling, or where the ceiling should be. The hole is still there, open to the sky. You think about the wolves again, whether they were ever real, whether anything you've heard in the last few days was. Your mind isn't what it used to be. You see things at the edge of your vision that vanish when you look at them directly. You forget words. You forget what day it is. But the fear, that's sharp, that's real. And that's how winter gets you. Not always through hunger, not always through cold, but through doubt, through long nights where sounds become stories, and stories become truths, where you don't know if you're safe or just numb, where you hear wolves and can't tell if they're outside, inside, or just somewhere in the back of your own tired brain. And maybe it doesn't even matter, because at this point, whether they're real or not, the fear is, and you have to live with that. You see a drip, just one, sliding from the edge of the roof and hitting the stone with a soft plink. And just like that, something dangerous blooms inside you. Hope. The sun isn't warm, not really, but it's less cruel than before. The snow doesn't crunch underfoot, it slumps, heavy and wet. You even heard a bird yesterday, or thought you did. The sound was distant, uncertain, like it hadn't decided if it was worth coming back. Still, you took it as a sign. You told yourself that maybe, just maybe, this nightmare had an end. But here's the thing about late winter in the medieval world. It's not over when you think it is. It just tricks you into relaxing, before it lands the final blow. You step outside and feel mud under your shoes for the first time in weeks. It's not pleasant. It's sticky cold and smells faintly like rot, but it's not ice. That has to count for something. You breathe in air that doesn't stab your lungs. The wind isn't warm, but it's less violent. The animals are quieter. You start to believe the worst is behind you, and that belief is the beginning of the next mistake. Because nature doesn't care about your hope, and the medieval calendar isn't built on optimism. It's built on surviving another month of not quite dead yet. Food stores are almost gone. What little is left is damp, half-spoiled or guarded like treasure. Rats have taken their share, so have neighbors. You caught one sneaking around the barn last week, eyes hollow, fingers twitching like he didn't even know he was stealing anymore. You didn't stop him. You barely had the strength to shout. Besides, you understood. If you'd found his barn first, you'd have done the same. The snow might be melting, but your stomach doesn't know it. Your body doesn't trust it. It's learned not to. You try to patch the roof. Again. This time it holds a little better. The thatch not frozen solid for once. But everything you fix feels like work done too late. You can't shake the feeling that all this labor is for a spring that might not come, or might come too late. You remember last year when the late frost killed the first planting and left everyone a month behind. You remember the year before when the melt caused the river to flood and the road into town disappeared for weeks. You start thinking in disasters now, not in seasons. Inside, people move differently. There's a little more conversation, but it's brittle. Jokes are made, then quickly taken back. A child says, "Spring is coming," and no one corrects them, but no one agrees either, because they've all seen it happen before, the false spring. The week of warmth that fools the village into planting too early, into opening doors, into letting their guard down. And then comes the snap, the last frost, the surprise storm, the disease that spreads because now everyone's indoors again, huddling in damp clothes, their immune systems already wrecked by months of starvation. And still the hope sits there, small, glowing, dangerous. You think about digging, just a little, just to see if the ground will take a seed. You think about traveling to the next town for supplies. Surely the pass is open by now. But then you remember the snowdrift from last week. You remember the man who left in March once and never came back. You remember that the forest is still silent, and the birds you thought you heard haven't returned. Maybe that sound wasn't a bird at all. Spring is close, that much is true, but it's not here yet. And in medieval life, close doesn't mean safe. Close means one more month of barely holding on, of watching your child grow thinner, your neighbors go quiet, your roof grow soft, your fire grow weak. Close means tricking yourself into thinking you can breathe again. And in winter, that's how people die, not when it's coldest, but when they think it isn't anymore. You wake up, which is already an achievement. You're stiff, cold, hungry. None of that's new. But this morning feels different, not better, just heavier. Like your body had to negotiate with something in the dark to stay here. You open your eyes and wait to feel glad about it, but the feeling never arrives. There's no joy, no relief, just the realization that you're still here, and so is the cold, and so is everything else. The broken roof, the empty larder, the cough you can't shake. You sit up, but not too fast. The last time you stood quickly, the room tilted sideways and your legs gave out. This time, you ease into it, like you're borrowing strength from someone else. Across the room, someone else is waking up, or at least stirring. A blanket shifts. A cough breaks the silence. You can't remember when you last had a full conversation with them. Words take too much effort now. Most communication is eye contact. Nods, the occasional grunt of agreement or warning. Even your voice sounds different when you use it. Hoarser, like it doesn't recognize its own purpose. But you're not alone, and that matters. You don't know if it's comfort or just shared misery, but it's what's left. Company, even when there's nothing to say. You step outside, slowly. The air bites, but not as sharply as before. The sky is a color you haven't seen in months. Not blue, exactly, but not pure gray, either. Slush coats the ground. Your boots sink with a squelch that's equal parts relief and concern. The world is changing. You can feel it. You can smell it. That earthy, fungal scent of wet things waking up. But you don't trust it. You've been here too long to believe the first signs. The seasons lie. You tell yourself to focus on what's in front of you. A collapsed fence. The woodpile now reduced to one damp log. The door that won't shut properly. Survival means making lists. Fix this. Find food. Boil water. But your brain keeps drifting. You forget things more often now. Names, dates, whether you've eaten. Some days, you forget you're supposed to care. It's not that you want to give up. You're just too tired to want much of anything. Your muscles ache with the dull throb of long effort, not injury. Your fingers don't always respond on the first try. You drop things. You blink and realize you've been standing in the same spot for 10 minutes, staring at nothing. These aren't the signs of sickness. Exactly, just the cost of a winter that asks too much and gives nothing back. Inside, the smell has changed. It used to be smoke and sweat and stale bread. Now it's mustier, moldier. The walls feel damp. The blankets never quite dry. You notice new stains you don't remember. It's hard to say when the house started falling apart. Maybe it always was, but now it feels less like a shelter and more like a container. A box you live in because you can't afford to leave. There's no grand collapse, just the slow erosion of livability. You spend more time wrapped in cloaks than moving. You eat when reminded. You sleep like a stone and wake up feeling heavier. And the others? They're quiet. That's the worst part. No one complains anymore. No one suggests plans. The energy it takes to argue just isn't there. You catch someone staring at the fire, or where the fire used to be, for long minutes, unmoving. You wonder what they're thinking, if they're thinking anything. Maybe they're just resting. Maybe they're waiting. You want to ask, but you don't, because what if they answer? What if they don't? Either way, it means you have to engage with a reality you've been avoiding. That surviving isn't enough. That survival isn't the same thing as living. You made it through the night, and you'll probably make it through the next one. But you're not okay. None of you are. And maybe that's the part no one talks about. That winter doesn't end with a single sunrise. It fades, slowly, reluctantly. And as it fades, it leaves a mark, not just on your body, but on the way you see things. You'll plant again. You'll fix the roof. You'll laugh eventually. But something in you stayed behind, curled up on the cold floor of a half-frozen room, waiting for the light, and not entirely convinced it would come. One morning, you wake up, and the silence is different. It's not empty. It's full, with birdsong. Not the loud, jubilant calls of summer, but tentative chirps, like nature's testing the volume knob. You sit up and listen, wondering if it's real. For a moment, you think you're dreaming, but then someone else hears it too. You catch their eye across the room, a raised brow, a twitch of a smile. It's not warmth, exactly, but it's the shadow of it. You stand and go to the door, and when you open it, the world has changed. The snow is still there, but it's retreating, tired, sluggish, beaten. Water trickles down the path in lazy rivulets. Grass is peeking through, like it's forgotten how to stand. Spring has come, but your body doesn't feel spring. It feels worn, lopsided, like a garment stretched too far at the seams. You slept, technically, but sleep hasn't meant rest in months. Your joints still ache, your stomach still groans. You breathe easier, but not easily. The sun hits your skin, and you don't flinch, but you also don't bask. You don't remember how. You shuffle instead of stride. You work slowly. You speak less. You're not unwell, not exactly, but you're not whole either. And it's only now, as the ice melts and the days stretch longer, that you realize what winter carved out of you and what it didn't give back. The house is quieter now. Not everyone made it. You don't speak their names, not because you've forgotten, but because remembering them too clearly makes the warmth hurt. You find their things: a carved spoon, a scrap of cloth with stitching, a corner of the shared blanket no one touches anymore. You bury what you can. You pile stones where the ground is soft enough to dig. It doesn't feel like mourning, it feels like maintenance, like closing a book you didn't get to finish, knowing the rest of the story is gone. And while the sun warms your back, you realize you're crying, and you're not even sure when you started. You want to celebrate. Everyone expects it. Spring festivals are supposed to mark the end of hunger, the return of color, the joy of having survived. But the idea of dancing feels absurd. You walk to the village green and see others, thinner, quieter, eyes like yours. Someone tries to play a flute and fumbles it. Someone else brings out last year's festival garland, now faded and patchy. No one says it, but everyone feels it. This isn't a triumph, it's a truce. You nod to each other, quietly. We made it, you mean. Barely, still here. The work returns quickly. Fields must be cleared. Roofs must be patched for real this time. Tools have rusted. Seeds need planting. Everyone moves like they're underwater. It's not laziness. It's weariness baked into the marrow. The old people say it takes a full year to recover from a harsh winter. You think that might be optimistic, because some things aren't coming back. Some fires, once out, don't relight. You used to sing while you worked. You don't sing anymore. Not because you're sad, just because silence feels easier, safer, less fragile. You see it in the children too. The way they don't run. Not yet. They walk carefully, like the ground might still give out. They hold their bowls close, even when food returns. They look at the sky with suspicion. They don't trust blue skies. Not yet. You don't either. The trauma isn't over. It's just quiet now, like a bruise that hasn't gone away, just changed color. You've come out of the cave, but the cave didn't leave you. Not fully. Maybe it never will. So yes, spring is here, and so are you. But you're not the same person who went into winter. That version of you was softer, funnier, had longer hair, sang more, laughed more, trusted the weather. Now you flinch at wind, You inventory supplies out of habit. You sleep like you might have to wake up and run. And maybe someday that tension will ease, but not yet, because spring may have arrived. But you're still trying to thaw. The snow has melted. The river runs free. The mud paths are thick with boot prints again. People are talking. Tools are clinking. Tools are clinking. Life is moving slowly, but forward. You look around and realize how much has changed. Not just in the land, but in the people. The ones who are left anyway. There are fewer voices now, and fewer faces. Some houses sit empty. Their chimneys never smoked again after the deep freeze in February. You walk past them without stopping. You've learned to step around silence. It lingers in the bones of this village like frost in the soil. Everyone's working harder than before, not because they're full of spring joy, but because they're afraid. Afraid it'll come back. Afraid it'll be worse next time. There's no memory more permanent than hunger. It lives in your hands, your gut, your pace. People hoard more now, share less, plant more than they can harvest. They don't laugh while they work like they used to. And when the wind changes direction, everyone pauses, just for a second, to check if it smells like snow again. You hear the friar say the suffering was a test. That winter purified the village like iron in the forge. You don't argue. Let him think it was holy. You don't believe the cold was sent for any reason. It didn't teach you. It didn't bless you. It nearly killed you. But you nod because you don't have the energy to debate. People need meaning, and this is theirs. You find your meaning in the shovel in your hand, in the hole you're digging for new root vegetables, in the stretch of sun on your face that doesn't feel like mockery anymore. But even with the sun, there's no guarantee. The last winter broke the rhythm. There's talk of late frosts again. The snow may return next month, or not for years. No one knows anymore. The monks say the climate is changing, that famines come in patterns, that some winters are simply crueler than others. You don't know about that. All you know is that every cold season now feels like a game you weren't trained to survive, one where the rules shift halfway through and no one tells you. So you prepare for the next round, always. And here's what no one tells you. The cold stays in the house long after it's gone. The walls are stained with it. The beams groan even in the heat. You open a chest and still expect your hands to sting. You go to sleep and still pull the blankets high, even though the air is mild. You touch someone's hand and wait for the chill that isn't there. You eat, but the hunger lingers. You sleep, but rest doesn't come easy. Survival rewrites your instincts, not just your routines. Spring may be here, but your body doesn't trust it yet. It still moves like it's being watched. The children bounce back faster. They're already chasing chickens and dunking each other in the stream. But you can see it in their parents. The haunted edge. The way their eyes scan the horizon. The way they ration without thinking. You want to tell the children to be careful, not to waste food, not to wander too far from the hearth. But you don't. You let them laugh. Someone has to. Let them forget what it was like to boil shoe leather. Let them believe the worst is behind them, for a while at least. Because that's the final truth of medieval winter. It doesn't really end. It recedes. It pauses. And when it returns, next year or 5 years from now, it won't announce itself. It'll start with a cold wind, a bad harvest, a cough that lingers too long, and suddenly you'll be back where you started, huddled in a room, counting sticks, praying the roof holds. The cold doesn't need to kill you to win. It just needs to remind you that survival isn't a moment, it's a cycle. And in this world, that cycle never ends.